PMDD, premenstrual dysphoric disorder. I'm going to be showing you stories of women that have been suffering from PMDD all around the world. I'm helping to spread awareness to all women who are suffering with PMDD that don't know about it, or with women that feel alone with PMDD. Here are the stories of all the women around the world that have PMDD. Just keep watching.
Hi PMDD warriors, my name is Mia and I'm from Derbyshire in England. I'm here to talk to you about PMDD, or my journey with PMDD. PMDD in my own words, kind of having to live a half life, I guess. Half of a month I feel totally normal, and then the rest of the month I just really struggle to function. That's pretty much a half life living with PMDD, is how I would probably explain it in my own words, just because that's exactly what it feels like. You feel like you're kind of two different people. And half of the month you get to live your normal life, see the people that you love, be successful in your job and just be normal, and then the other half of the month, the other half of your life, you're just kind of away. You're not really in your body. Somebody else is in control. I got diagnosed about a month ago, which seems a bit crazy. I started my periods when I was 9 years old, and from the age of 9 I really struggled with my periods. They were always really irregular, really painful. I used to faint on the way to school sometimes. My friend had to carry me home. Yeah, they were very, very unpleasant for me. And I also, from about that age, like shrank into myself, if that makes sense. When I was younger, I was like totally fearless. I was really adventurous, climbing trees, proper like, would just do anything. I did archery and abseiling, and I was a girl guide, and really like just loving life. And then my period started and it was horrendous. It was really horrendous. I pretty much had like a week off school once a month, every month, which also affected my school. And then obviously you get slapped from school because you're missing it, and they don't want you to miss it, and they don't understand why, and I didn't understand why, and I couldn't articulate it. I couldn't tell them why, couldn't explain it, because it's really hard to put into words, and you don't want to feel like you're being judged, so you're always kind of careful about how you explain it because of social stigma and things like that to do with mental health. It's really hard to put into words to someone. Half of the month I feel normal, and then half of the month I have all of these symptoms that make me feel like I'm like losing control of my own life. There's this fear that somebody's going to say, oh, you're mental, which I felt, which is why I struggle to speak up about it, which is dangerous because then it causes things like eating disorders and self-harm, both of which I struggled with myself. Self-harm when I was younger, and then eating disorder when I was at university, still undiagnosed, still struggling with my hormones and struggling to keep control and juggle everything. I found it really, really difficult. So luckily I'm over that now.
Hi, I'm Tatiana. I would explain PMDD as an extreme form of PMS that is so severe it disrupts daily life. It can last as long as 2 weeks or more every month. It can literally feel like the flu, plus extreme mood swings and emotions like depression, grief, and anxiety. I've experienced this in addition to terrible cramps, migraines, an extremely heavy flow, and bloating. I feel weak, utterly exhausted, and completely unmotivated during those times. I found out I had PMDD my senior year in high school. I missed days of school and work every month, multiple days, with excruciating symptoms, and I was concerned that something was really wrong. So I went to the doctor, who diagnosed me with PMDD and then prescribed me birth control pills and antidepressants to dull the discomfort, which helped me short term, but long term disrupted my hormones even more.
I'm Jesenia Poissant, and I was diagnosed with PMDD 3 years ago. And the best way that I would describe PMDD, before I even knew that I had it, I was always on a constant emotional roller coaster, always up and down. I always thought I just had depression. I never went to doctors, so I didn't know that I was having a lot more symptoms that were causing the up and down. I just always said an emotional roller coaster. PMDD is a severe form of PMS, and there's a lot of symptoms that affect it, and it could be really debilitating. I got diagnosed with PMDD 3 years ago, but I found out myself that I had PMDD because I moved to Arizona and realized nothing's really changed. I thought being in the sun every day would really help because I just thought I had depression. And then I finally clicked that it was cyclical to my periods every month, and I went on the internet, looked up severe PMS, and found PMDD. And then I went to my gynecologist at the time, and I brought it up to her, and she confirmed that I had PMDD. Now, the sun definitely does help. I found the root cause, I found the identifier of what was going on, and that really, really helped becoming aware about everything else. I believe I've had PMDD since I'm 18, but I probably started once my period started. The memories are vague, but now there's things that I'm starting to remember, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I had PMDD at that moment. It's really interesting to look back to see that.
Hey you guys, my name is Natasha, and I was asked to explain what PMDD is to me. If you'd ask me today, my answer is a blessing in disguise. Had you have asked me years ago, I would have said it's like being in prison and being sent to solitary confinement every 2 weeks. Being alone inside 4 walls, screaming for help but nobody cares. You can't stand to be around yourself, but you can't escape. It's cold, it's dark, you're depressed, you're angry, at times suicidal. It sucks, and there's nothing you can do about it. That's how I would have explained it in the past. For as long as I can remember, but I wasn't diagnosed until I was like early 30s. Might have been right at 30. I don't know, anywhere between 30 and 32, I don't know exactly.
Hi there, my name's Emma. I'm going to be turning 37 next month, and I've suffered PMDD knowingly for 8 years now, which has been an interesting ride. Not easy at all, because PMDD sees you up to 2 weeks of every month, going completely under, not being able to take a breath whatsoever at all. For me, I suffer all of the crazy psychological symptoms bar hypersomnia because I'm a chronic insomniac. So PMDD for me is control of my mind, flipping between, Jekyll and Hyde. I'll rage. It'll go from anxiety to fatigue to depression to frustration, and then I will just flip my lid at nothing. Nothing really needs to happen. I will completely switch, and I cannot leave that mode at all when that happens, and that's when my suicidal ideations come in. Generally for me, kind of chops and changes, but a week before my period or 2 days, 1 day before is when the big events happen. But a lot of the rest of the time is just being exhausted, depressed, down on myself, feeling hopeless, all of that. I knew nothing about PMDD until I had an online counselling session, and I was just, I don't know, I was just going insane regularly, and I thought it might have something to do with the endometriosis I was trying to get rid of with natural methods at the time, 8 years ago, so I kept a period diary. When I was talking to this counsellor online, I said, well, I'm feeling pretty good right now. Let me check this diary and see when it is that I actually do go nuts, because I have been noting it down. And I did see that it was only after ovulation and before my bleach. So I did a little Google, found PMDD. I am not somebody who drugs like SSRIs, the pill, that kind of stuff agrees with. So hence I was doing the natural route for endometriosis, and I decided that I'd do the same for PMDD, but I'd actually study a naturopathic nutrition diploma. So I used myself as a case study, and that was while I was living in Japan. So I checked off all the things that I'd written that would help for PMDD, but I couldn't find a traditional Chinese acupuncturist over in Japan because they do Japanese acupuncture, which is actually different. So I didn't get a good acupuncturist until I moved over to Tasmania, because I met a Tassie boy while I was living in Japan, and now I live here in Tas. And miraculously, within 2 months, all of my symptoms were gone, including my biggest one, chronic insomnia. It's always the thing to take me out. For those 2 weeks, that luteal phase between ovulation and bleed, I was messed up. So having acupuncture, getting rid of that for me was a miracle, and it actually got rid of PMDD for me for months at a time. I've been living here in Tas for 4 years now. The first few years, seeing an acupuncturist really worked for me. This past year, unfortunately, the efficacy of that has started to wear off. I don't know if it's that or I'm just getting older, like I say, 37 next month. But it's been messy. So I do have a good team still though. I see a naturopath. I have all kinds of exciting tinctures. One of them is, I call, my golden liquid. It's got saffron and peony, a couple of other things that help your adrenals and mood balancing. That's actually helped quite a lot.
So hello, my name is Alyssa. I live in the Chicago area, and I have PMDD. Talking about this in this kind of venue is really scary. I feel very vulnerable right now, and I am open and honest about it with people that I'm close with, but I really want to delve more into advocacy of it, because without the other women in my life being able to help point out that this may be affecting me, I wouldn't have gotten there, and I wouldn't be able to be a help and support like that for other women too. But it's a very personal and a very visceral disorder, and it can be kind of hard to talk about. It's important to note that I am a music therapist, so I'm trained a bit in helping skills. When I think about it, my brain goes straight to the, what's actually happening in your body to cause this disorder to happen. So I hear PMDD and I think of a woman whose brain doesn't react typically to the change in hormone levels that happen around ovulation. So when estrogen and progesterone are released in the body, the brain kind of freaks out, and everything is amplified, basically, for that woman. For me, also, PMDD is, I hear it and I think of an extra weight that I carry around with me. It's something that is, not far from the forefront of my mind now that I have a better awareness of what it is and how it affects my life, because it's so prevalent in the day-to-day. And it's something that I really have to consider if I want to make sure that I'm being authentic to myself and maintaining
good and appropriate long-term relationships with the people that are really important to me, because it means that often I can't, I don't go unfiltered all the time, ever. I was diagnosed with PMDD in December. My PMDD started to get bad in 2016. I went on a hormonal birth control, and I had some underlying anxiety. Before that, I'd get bad panic attacks, and the stress of college was a lot. And I didn't handle it the best, and that's okay. But I went on a hormonal birth control to try to clear up my skin, and it ended up, I had constant anxiety. I was having daily or every other day panic attacks. I would have to leave sessions I was leading at work because I would break down crying. I was often fighting with my employers. I was very irritable and mood swingy. So I was having a lot of conflict with my roommates and my boyfriend as well. And it was all very atypical behavior for me. Normally I'm much more even-keeled, and I have good insight into myself, and I'm able to process and reflect that kind of thing very well, and I take care of myself very well. And so this was all very out of character. And I didn't really make the connection that it started happening with the birth control until much later. But I was on the phone with my mom, crying as I was driving home from work for the third day in a row. And she had asked me if I had heard of PMDD before. She had asked where I was in my cycle, and I thought that was a strange question because I'm very close with my mom, but to me that was very personal information. And I mentioned I think it was coming later that week or maybe the following week, and she had asked if I had heard of PMDD, and I hadn't. And by the time I got home, she had sent me an email with a list of resources, and as I was continuing to drive home, she told me her story with PMDD and how she had been suffering for as long as she could remember, and how the only time that she had found relief was when she was pregnant with my sister and I. She told me that my older sister, that I love and adore very dearly, also suffers with PMDD, and had said that had been affecting her since she had been a teenager as well, and that had explained a lot of the interpersonal conflict that she had with our family around that time. And she said that she was starting to suspect that I suffered from it as well, based on the reactions that I was having. And when I got home and I sat through and I read all the resources, it really resonated with me. It was like, wow, this is why I don't feel like myself for half of the time. Half of a month, I don't feel like myself, and I question whether that's the real me, the depressed, anxious, irritable, skin crawling whenever something goes wrong me, or the easygoing, laid back, really just wants to be there and help people and listen to people, happy, find excuses to laugh at things and sees the beauty in small things. It's like two different sides of the same person, and they both took up the same amount of time, and I never knew which was the real one. Never felt like me. I went to therapy. I stopped taking the birth control, and it got better for about half the time. And before my period, it was still the same. Still pretty bad. A couple of months later, I had relocated and moved to Chicago with my boyfriend, and there was a provider in the Chicago area that specialized in PMDD. And I went to go see her and got diagnosed pretty darn quickly. I had been symptom tracking for a couple of months, and it was very clear. She got me hooked up with a psychiatrist who was able to prescribe a low-dose antidepressant. And here we are now in April, and things are much better managed, although it's not perfect. But that's okay. It's so much better than it was before, and for that I am grateful.
I think the hardest thing that I deal with PMDD is the emotional aspect of it. How emotionally draining it can be. Because all those emotions, feeling anger, rage, crying, weeping, sad, all that, and then happy because it's that constant emotional roller coaster. That's the hardest part for me. Because when my emotions are not in check, everything is out of balance for me. And I would say that's the really hardest part. And then I would say the second hardest part is that people really don't know about it, and when you tell them about it, it's like they don't really hear you.
So for me, the hardest part of PMDD, the things like self-harm, things I would say that are really, really difficult for me, like ongoing, are the really aggressive, intrusive, suicidal thoughts. It's like a constant loop of this thought constantly when I'm in my luteal phase. I get that, and it just won't leave me alone. It's horrible, and it's just constant. That's really, really difficult to get past. I find it really, really difficult to carry on at work and things like that, and to be around other people. I get really bad, and this is one that's like, I don't know if that's just me or other people have it as well. I get really bad like sensory overload. So say I'm in a supermarket or a shop or at work or even with family, and I'm struggling with my hormones, I kind of just get so overwhelmed with noise that's going on and people around me, and I start to feel really panicky, and I just have to exit the building and pretty much run home. I really struggle when I'm in that phase to go anywhere without my partner, because he's super supportive. He's like my home base, and I feel super, super safe when he's around. When he's not around, if I'm in that phase, I tend not to go out of the house very much, which again goes back to the whole like half-life thing, because half of the time I'm able to do things. I'm very independent, fiercely independent, doing things for myself, earning my own money, and then half of the time I struggle to be anywhere without him and without feeling his like safety near me and his protection, because I just get so overwhelmed. And it manifests and it comes out in a really horrible way as well. If I'm like in a shop and someone is bugging me, I tend to get a little bit aggressive. I'm lucky in the sense that I really try hard not to direct that at my partner, mainly because he's amazing and he never puts a foot wrong. So yeah, he makes me feel great about myself. So I can be a little bit mean to people who I don't know when I'm in that phase, and it's not for anything that they're really doing, it just comes out. And I am not that kind of person. I work in customer service myself, and if I catch myself doing it, I always apologise, but it's really, really hard to try and explain to people. I'm just like not myself right now. You can't really do that, can you? So yeah, I find that really difficult because it's just so not me. I'm like the most polite, happy person in the world when I'm me and normal. Hence why today I'm in a good mood and feeling good and not luteal. So hence why I've decided to do the video today.
It's having, I second guess my reactions to everything. Part of that is just my personality. I'm a thinker. I overanalyze everything, and especially in social situations or emotional reactions, I take a lot of time to self-reflect. I like to think I'm pretty attuned, but with PMDD, I'm not when it's flaring up at all. I usually don't know that I am suffering from PMDD. My cycle's not very normal, so I can't track it day by day like some women can. And so in the middle of my cycle, middle of the month, I have no idea if I get upset with something that happened at work, or if if a friend says something that kind of ticks me off. I have no idea if my reaction is normal or if I'm over-exaggerating. When I feel sad or lonely, there are like 3 weeks out of the month that I have no idea where it's coming from, and what's authentic and okay to be feeling, and what extent that I should let myself feel those things or try to make it better. Or do I need to up my dose of Lexapro today because I snapped at my boyfriend because he made a joke that I would have found funny last week and I don't find it funny today? I just have no idea. It's really exhausting and it takes a lot of mental resources. Also, it really affects the people that I love and care about. My boyfriend and I do not fight often, but anytime we do squabble over things, it usually comes down to PMDD and we both end up hurt. And I hate seeing other people affected by this. It's difficult, and I often say things and immediately regret it and apologize, but that doesn't take it back.
The hardest thing I deal with having PMDD is that I'm an entrepreneur, mom of 4, and a wife. It can literally feel like I am robbed of 2 weeks every month, feeling terrible, which lowers my productivity and takes away joy from my life. And the mood swings make me feel like a totally different person sometimes. I hate not being able to function and enjoy my family and the things I am most passionate about. I feel so isolated and depressed during those times, and it is really tough taking care of everyone, let alone myself and my responsibilities. It makes me feel so unaligned, and it can be really hard to get back on track while trying to be my best self. It makes me feel so unaligned, and it can be really hard to get back on track